Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, more U.S. law firms are shutting down their operations in Shanghai, China's financial center. More on what's behind the exodus and why an expert says accounting firms in China are the next target.
I think this is a ongoing trend of China cracking down on national security and trying to move away from foreign firms as much as possible.
China's defense ministry decided to lash out at former President Donald Trump based on an anonymous source as tensions between the U.S. Taiwan alliance versus China reach historic highs. The U.S. Defense Secretary meeting his Chinese counterpart for the first time in 2 years. More on his concerns and China's response. And artificial intelligence researcher OpenAI is cracking down on sinister online influence campaigns. It says they are carried out by foreign actors from China to Russia and Iran. More on those covert operations. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we turn to today's top story, we'd like to share an announcement. June 4th is the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. On that day, the Chinese army unleashed weapons of war on unarmed students, killing thousands without repercussion. Now, decades after the slaughter, has the West finally discovered the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party? We're releasing a special report this Saturday to mark the anniversary of the event. 35 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party killed thousands of unarmed students with tanks and machine guns while the whole world watched.
The worst part of it, they did this without any consequence. It wants to be the master of the earth, the engineers of human souls.
The United States has embraced China, and that decision is having big impacts here in America.
The influence of communism, unfortunately, looks a lot like the same kind of intolerance of viewpoints and differing opinions and freedom and liberty.
Hear from Zhou Fengshuo, a former student leader in China's 1989 Tiananmen massacre, and Tom Oliverson, a state representative in Texas, as they work to counter communism and its influence in the United States. That's Saturday, June 1st on China in Focus. Tune in this Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time to learn more. A growing number of U.S. law firms are shutting down their offices in Shanghai, China's largest city and financial center. What's driving the change? NTD's Juliet Song has more.
A number of U.S. law firms are closing or plan to close their Shanghai operations. Among them, Sidley Austin, Perkins Coie, Latham & Watkins, Weil & Orrick. At the same time, merger and acquisition deals there are hitting a new low. Corporate transactions are drying up, and China's economy is traveling along a downward spiral. That's according to a report by the Financial Times. Frank Xie is the John M. Olin Palmetto Chair in Business at the University of South Carolina, Aiken. He says the law firm exodus reflects a deepening problem in the Chinese economy.
The Chinese economy in a big recession, more companies are closing down, right? Or reducing their operations, reducing their presence in China.
In the meantime, the country is tightening control of state secrets. Christopher Balding, senior fellow at Henry Jackson Society, has this to say.
I think this is a ongoing trend of China cracking down on national security and trying to move away from foreign firms as much as possible. We've seen this in everything from corporate intelligence and research firms to other services such as accounting and law.
Beijing has been tightening its control over information related to national security. Under it, it broadened a state secrets law, asking state agencies to protect information that are not state secrets, but that it says will cause certain adverse effects if leaked. Last year, Beijing also expanded the definition of espionage without clearly defining it. This raised concerns for foreign companies, fearing that normal business activities could be considered criminal acts. Authorities also raided several U.S. consulting firms, Capvision, Mintz, and Bain & Company. Balding added accounting firms could be the next target. Chinese authorities said it has fined real estate developer Evergrande for overstating its revenue. Now speculations are mounting about whether Beijing would go after Evergrande's former auditor, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and one of the big four accounting firms.
I would fully expect, especially with the Evergrande situation and PricewaterhouseCoopers, to see a similar trend among accounting firms and other services. We've already seen this with consulting firms that have been leaving. China has talked about nationalizing law firms, accounting firms, that they want that work to be done by Chinese accountants and Chinese lawyers. And the risk is simply too high having expat personnel and even interconnected IT systems for firms in China. And so the risk is simply too great for a lot of firms to even have operations in China.
He added some companies are moving their Asia operations from China to Tokyo and Singapore.
So firms are still very interested in Asia and even China, but they just migrate as many of those positions to other places as possible.
He said China's neighbors are set to benefit from this foreign firm migration. Juliet Song, NTD News.
China's defense ministry lashed out at former U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday, its spokesperson using unusually aggressive language for an official statement. That's after the Washington Post cited an unnamed source as saying Trump had suggested bombing Beijing if China invades Taiwan.
如果这种报道是属实的话，那么上述言论是非常丧心病狂的。
The Washington Post report published on Tuesday said that, like other candidates, the Republican frontrunner likes making promises to his donors. And Trump's specialty is his foreign policy, plus other topics like inflation and immigration. Without giving the when and where, the report said Trump suggested that, quote, he would have bombed Moscow and Beijing if Russia invaded Ukraine or China invaded Taiwan. The Trump campaign did not comment. 2 weeks ago, former President Donald Trump warned that the China-Russia alliance could threaten the security of Taiwan.
President Xi of China, I know him well, and President Putin of Russia, I know him well. They're right now together working on plans where they combine, where they get together and do damage, because that's ultimately what they're thinking about, doing damage. And you take a look at what President Xi said today. He fully expects to take Taiwan. He made that statement today. That's a big statement.
This follows a joint statement from Beijing and Moscow released during Putin's recent visit to China. According to the statement, Moscow supports any action by Beijing to take control of Taiwan, and Beijing supports Moscow's territorial claims as well. Next, defense chiefs from the U.S. and China talking for the first time in 2 years. The meeting was held on Friday at Asia's premier defense summit in Singapore. The meeting comes as tensions around Taiwan reach a historic high. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed concern about Chinese military activity near Taiwan, especially after the island's new leader was sworn in. The Pentagon said he told China to not use Taiwan's election as an excuse for coercive measures. Well, the Chinese defense head warned Austin that the U.S. should stay out of China's affairs with Taiwan. Beijing sees Taiwan as China's territory, despite never having ruled it. The back and forth comes one day after the Chinese Defense Ministry warned that a declaration of Taiwanese independence would mean war. Both Washington and Beijing emphasized the need to keep military-to-military communications open. Continuing with AI technology, a new Chinese chatbot has been trained on ideology from the Chinese regime's leader called Xi Jinping Thought. It centers on socialism with Chinese characteristics and includes the regime's top tenet, making sure the Chinese Communist Party retains absolute power. To discuss, we sat down with Arthur Herman, Senior Fellow and Director of the Quantum Alliance Initiative at Hudson Institute. Arthur Herman, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
It's great to be here.
Now, OpenAI's ChatGPT has been dominating headlines, but China is also coming out with their own model that's supposedly trained on Xi Jinping thought, or following Chinese CCP head Xi Jinping, which Financial Times is now dubbing ChatGPT. Now, when it comes to this race for AI, China's ByteDance, Alibaba, and Baidu are offering their models at rock bottom prices. What does all of this mean for that race for AI?
Beijing and the CCP are thinking very seriously about this as a global race. In other words, it's not just developing this technology in order to reinforce the CCP's ideology and to impose an ideological straitjacket over the Chinese populace. We've known that that's been in the works for a long time. But what they're also doing is creating exportable versions that can go out to countries to enable them to add AI to their tech portfolio in ways that are obviously going to speed up the processing of information. It's going to make the pattern recognition for so many areas much easier in that development. But of course, it's also going to be an AI model which is shaped by the Chinese Communist ideological model. And without a doubt, it'll also be one that will allow the Chinese Communist Party and their tech companies to follow and direct and even manipulate how that AI is being used in different countries and in different environments here. This is part of the way in which China's dominance, global dominance and global hegemony can be carried out through advanced technology.
On that note, what is China's AI strategy? How is it different from maybe the U.S.'s?
Really three factors that we have to bear in mind. The first is, and you're seeing this with regard to the competition with ChatGPT, is creating a competitive model for AI versus the U.S., which has been traditionally and still is the AI technology leader. The Chinese want to find ways in which they can convince others to go their route that'll be faster, cheaper, more efficient to use, easier to use, and so on. That's number one. Number two is going to be using AI for its industrial and enhance its economy. The Chinese have way ahead of us on doing this, of creating entirely automated shipyards, for example, in which AI and robotics make it possible to run the entire operation without any human operators at all. The way in which they've used this in their military in the same uses of AI at its industrial and military uses. Very important part of China's AI strategy. It's one that we're still trying to figure out where we come in and where we're going to sit with regard to that as part of our economy. Then the third one, and that's the one that I think when you look at the way in which AI has been used to control and manipulate and oppress the Uyghur minority in China, and that is of using it for, I'll call it enhanced crowd control, in order to supervise and direct the everyday affairs of citizens of the population so that they become completely subject to and dominated by the ruling party and by the ruling party's ideology here. So what's happened, Tiffany, is that Chinese judges now will be forced to make decisions and carry out the law as the Communist Party sees fit through the directions provided by the AI system within the Supreme Court Information Center. This is just one more example of how AI can be used to control and direct a population. One other thing on this point is that AI also makes it possible within the Chinese judicial system, if you're found guilty of an offense, it's possible through their social credit system to seize a person's income, seize a person's property, to shut down their business or their profession almost instantly in response to an unfavorable verdict within the Chinese court system. So three options: competitive model with the U.S. AI industry, industrial, economic, and military use to enhance and build China's economy and its military. But then the third one is directing control over the Chinese population, and then looking for ways to direct that control over everybody else, including U.S. citizens, ultimately.
Quite concerning indeed. Arthur Herman, thank you
very,
so much.
Very much worrisome. Yep, pleasure to be here.
OpenAI says it disrupted a string of online influence campaigns over the past 3 months. The company said Thursday that these malign activities were carried out by foreign actors from China, Russia, Iran, and Israel. In a statement, the company said foreign actors used tools like ChatGPT to generate images, cartoons, fake accounts, and online comments. And the goal was to, quote, manipulate public opinion or influence political outcomes. OpenAI specifically identified a Chinese network known as Spamiflage, which used AI models to target criticism of the Chinese Communist Party. But experts said these online activists haven't really gained much traction. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. The U.S. is rolling out new visa restrictions on Chinese and Hong Kong officials. That's following 14 guilty verdicts of pro-democracy organizers in the city's latest national security law trial. A clampdown on freedom in Hong Kong. Discover the implications of the recent convictions of dissidents for the city with political commentator Gordon Chang.
Hong Kong now is no different than the rest of China when it comes to political coercion.
And China's electric car makers are gearing up to take on Tesla and the European auto giants. How are they planning to steal the spotlight? More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.